Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is very overdue and a lot later than I had first planned for it to be, but you know, life happens. So in this video, I set myself a challenge to help me get back into creating on a regular basis again, because when I did this challenge at the beginning of April, I had basically not been painting or drawing for about 4 months since I took a break at the end of last year. And 2022 was an emotional roller coaster for me, so I guess I felt a bit burnt out at the beginning of this year and not really feeling like creating anything. Anyway, when April came, I really wanted to get back into creating again, so I set myself this challenge of creating 28 paintings in 2 days with a limited set of tools. I did a similar challenge last year as well and filmed it, so I will link to those videos on the screen. And that challenge really helped me get into painting full time last year, which was my goal at that time. And that was my goal this time around as well. And now that I'm recording this voiceover, it's the beginning of June, and I can definitely say that this challenge has helped me a lot to get back into creating. But more about that a bit later. As I mentioned before, the quote-unquote rules of this challenge were to create 20 paintings, and by the way, I call them paintings very loosely because they're more like brain dumps or sketches. So I aimed to create 20 pieces in 2 days with a limited set of tools, and the tools I used were only colored pencils and pro markers. The reason I wanted to have a limited set of tools was that I wanted to make this challenge as easy as possible to get into, and so I didn't want to overwhelm myself with other tools like charcoal, watercolors, acrylics, brushes, palette knives, and so on. I just wanted it to be simple and easily accessible to me. So the first thing I did was to prepare by taking out all the pens and pencils I would be using. I also grabbed regular A4 printer paper. Since I would only use pens and pencils, I didn't feel like I needed to have any thicker paper, and it didn't really matter if any of the pens were to bleed through, because as I said, this was just a challenge to get some ideas out rather than create any finished pieces. So anyway, I tore some of the sheets of paper in half while I kept others at their standard A4 size, because I wanted some variations in size if I wanted to do something bigger as well. And then I just started by making some scribbles. So I started with an idea that I got from Olafur Eliasson. I saw him in an episode of a documentary series on Netflix called Abstract, and in his episode he talked about how his dad told him to make some swirls on a piece of paper and then add color to the blank spaces. And so I thought I would start with that idea and then see how I could develop that into something different, into other ideas that I could explore later on in my sketchbook. So I started this challenge by swirling a pen randomly around on the paper and then filling in some of the blank spaces with different colors. And besides trying to get loose and just get into the flow, I think my aim at the beginning of this challenge was also to see what kind of color combinations I liked. I'm someone who loves blue and purple, so I tested those out with their complementary colors, which is something I've continued to use as I've taken the ideas I got from this challenge and further developed them in my sketchbook, which, by the way, I will show you and talk more about in an upcoming video. And then when I had done a couple of pieces with that kind of mark making, I began to develop that into something different. And that's where the geometrical patterns started to emerge. And as you will see, I can't draw a straight line to save my life, but that's okay since these are just ideas that I'm kind of brain dumping onto paper. This is not about creating beautiful pieces, it's not even about making art, it's just about getting my ideas out and seeing what they can develop into. And while it started off with just one triangle and some random swirls on top of that, I then started to explore what it would look like to add more triangles to the mix. So I basically took one idea and then explore that a bit more to see what kind of new ideas I could develop that into. And after I had played around with that a bit, I started to think about other geometrical shapes that I could use in a similar way that I did with the triangles, because I really like the mix between the geometrical shapes and the more organic swirls. There was just something about that caught my attention and curiosity, and I believe that it's important to pay attention to the things that catch my attention when brain dumping ideas like this, or when I'm working in my sketchbook to explore my ideas further. I just feel like following what piques your interest and what you find appealing or beautiful is a huge part of being able to create the kind of art that you'll be proud of and that you want to create. And also coming up with a type of art that is more authentic to you and not too similar to other art pieces that inspire you and so on. So what I did then was to explore what it would look like with circles, but that didn't really appeal to me because it looked too similar to the organic swirls. And that's when I realized that I was just more interested in the mix between the straight and curved lines. So the mix between geometric patterns like triangles and rhombus shapes and the organic swirls. That's what piqued my interest. And rhombus shapes, or diamonds, which I also call them, they were something I explored a lot in this challenge. For some reason, I just find the diamond shapes to be very appealing. I'm not quite sure why, but I really wanted to explore it further since it piqued my interest. And considering what I'm currently working on, which is something I will talk about in an upcoming video, I can clearly see how following my curiosity and what piques my interest has benefited me. Anyway, let's get back to this challenge and what I'm doing. Again, as you can see, the geometric shapes are not perfect, but that's not the purpose of this challenge. Instead, I focused on what they would look like if I had one smaller diamond inside another one, or several in a row along the length of the paper, or what they would look like if they overlapped and by doing that created a third diamond in the middle, etc. And all of them were combined with some kind of organic shape, either the swirls or some waves that I randomly filled the diamonds with. I also tested out some other shapes at the tips of the diamonds to explore what that would look like. And I did some with circles or smaller diamonds that were kind of hiding behind the others and just sticking up at the very ends. And at this point, I just stuck to my favorite colors and the complementaries because I had several ideas swirling in my head and wanted to get them out quite quickly. Overall, I feel like this challenge was really impactful for me since it has influenced the work I've been doing ever since. Again, I will talk more about that in an upcoming video. This challenge gave me a lot of new inspiration and ideas that I've been developing and working on ever since, and I'm really happy about that. Because that's exactly what these challenges I set for myself are all about. They may be conducted in different ways. The challenge I did last year was more about exploring everything from mark making to shapes to color combinations to different techniques, etc. Whereas this challenge was more about shapes and a little bit about color combinations I liked. But at the core, it's all about brain dumping ideas and finding out what piques my interest so that I can further develop that. Because that's always very inspiring to me. So I'm pretty sure I will do something like this every year at the very least. Anyway, here's the result of the challenge. These are all the ideas I came up with during this challenge, and these are what I've kind of developed in my sketchbook, which is something I will talk about in the next video that will come up on my channel. And so that marks the end of this video. If you've liked it, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos from me. And especially if you want to see the other ideas that I've developed in my sketchbook from the ideas that I got in this challenge. So until next time, happy creating!